Children who witness abuse or experience it themselves, they're some of the most vulnerable in our community. The dedicated people at the local nonprofit Samaritan House know the toll.
Witnessing domestic violence can have a lot of psychological trauma on a child.
It's time we talk about the dangers our children and teens face right here in Hampton Roads. News 3 Investigates is shining a light on a problem that leaves lasting scars and steals childhoods. How survivors and helpers on the front line say we can protect our kids before their innocence is lost. Thank you so much for joining us for this incredibly important conversation. I'm News 3 anchor and investigator Jessica Larche. We are taking an in-depth look at how abuse in many forms is impacting children and teenagers in our community. In just a moment, I will bring in a panel of people dedicated to helping survivors of child abuse here at home. But first, I'm exposing the warning signs, the dangers, and the data behind child abuse. Abuse against children can take many forms. Domestic abuse, physical or emotional. Teen dating violence.
How could you say that you love my pretty face when you're destroying it?
Sextortion, deceiving children into sending compromising images of themselves, then demanding money to keep it hidden.
So it was the shame and the embarrassment and the guilt.
A child's innocence at stake as predators lurk in online gaming platforms.
Like a robbers rob the bank, because that's where the money is. That's where the children are.
According to the National Children's Alliance, more than 600,000 children are abused in the U.S. each year. The Alliance also says an estimated 1,820 children died from abuse and neglect in the U.S. in 2021.
I just miss my son so much.
Ashley and Wendy Watson know the pain of losing a child because of bullying, another form of abuse. Their 12-year-old son Brody died by suicide. The Northern Virginia family later learned their son was bullied at school.
The pain that we're going through is unimaginable.
Unimaginable yet preventable when there's a plea for help and it's met with the right resources. Samaritan House offers resources and hope in Hampton Roads. The nonprofit helps people free themselves from domestic and sexual violence, human trafficking, and homelessness. Horrific experiences, as you'll learn, that are often rooted in abuse endured during childhood. News 3 is following through on this issue by sharing resources and prevention strategies straight from experts and professionals here in Hampton Roads. So let's bring in our community partners to dive into this discussion about child abuse and what we can do to help. They are here to offer advice on what children and parents should look out for and how you can help keep your family safe. We'll hear from them in just a moment about healthy relationships. But first, we need to talk about teen dating violence and the traumatic consequences. Here's my colleague, investigator Margaret Kavanaugh.
He punched me so hard that I swung and I hit the back wall.
Brutal attacks.
He chomped down on my eyebrow.
Biting her face.
At first, it was physical, viciously physical. And then I learned to talk my way around it.
Early in high school, Jasmine Smith says she got straight A's and was a determined teen.
Didn't have a care in the world about boys. Boys weren't interested in me, and I definitely wasn't interested in them.
But then she met him.
So I had literally just turned 17.
And then he was
21. I think that I was happy that someone thought I was pretty, that he told me that I was pretty.
With problems at home, she says he provided her with a place to stay.
And I worked in the cafeteria, so, I carried whatever I took from the cafeteria in my backpack. So if it was pizza that I had put in a bag or, whatever it was a place that I could go. And it was a bed.
But the violence was unbearable.
How could you say that you love my pretty face when you're destroying it?
The CDC reports that teen dating violence is common. They say 1 in 12 teens experience physical dating violence and that girls experience higher rates of physical and sexual violence than boys. Experts say people need to talk about the red flags.
We see cyber stalking, we see sextortion, we see all kinds of things happening with social media platforms. And Young adults and teens are constantly on their devices, constantly looking at it.
Unhealthy, abusive, or violent relationships can have short and long-term negative effects on a developing teen, according to the CDC. They say youth who are victims of teen dating violence are more likely to experience depression, anxiety, and substance abuse.
Talk to them very early on. We see teen dating violence as early as 12 to 15. And so be talking to your teens at 10, 11, 12 about healthy relationships, about having good peers.
They say violence in adolescent relationships set the stage for future relationship problems. Experts say to be involved in your teen's life and set a good example.
If you can display a healthy relationship for your children, they are more likely to seek out someone who's healthy, and they'll have their own healthy relationship.
How did you get away from him eventually?
So I went to the military. And I'm sorry.
But says he saw dollar signs and followed her.
And he found out that I was in the military. And of course, cha-ching.
The problems and violence continued.
Putting on that military uniform intimidated him so much. And the arguments were endless.
She was eventually able to leave, but says the long-lasting impacts of the abuse affected her into adulthood.
Looking back and thinking about all of the people who were there, who did see something, but they just didn't know what to say. They seen the bruises.
If you or someone you know is in an abusive relationship and looking for resources, we have them posted on our website at WTKR.com. Margaret Kavanaugh, News 3.
Margaret's report is chilling, and so it highlights the importance of having conversations with our children about their bodies, about their relationships early on.
Joining us now is Kelly Andrews, a play therapist with Military Integrated Therapies, Catherine Curran, a parent and managing partner with Morris, Curran, and O'Keefe, and Deanna Wallace, a victim assistance specialist with Homeland Security.
We all had emotional reactions to Margaret's story and the woman that who shared very deeply what happened to her. Kelly, I want to start with you. When we look at that cycle of abuse, when we look at what happened to the woman in that relationship, how important is it to have conversations early on with our children about what a healthy relationship looks like?
From early on, it's important to help children understand that there are no good secrets. So if anybody tells them to keep a secret, that's not healthy. Keeping a secret from parents, from friends, from teachers. If somebody is in an unhealthy relationship, they may be saying, oh, you don't need to tell your friend this, you don't need to tell your parent this, because the violence part comes, but there are multiple layers to getting there, and isolation is a big one, where people are told not to tell people.
But if our children learn that early on, that sets the stage.
Right. And then it continues to wire in their brains. So from 11 to 14, it's a big time for neural development where you use it or lose it. So the more you're wiring in and talking about healthy relationships at that time, the more their brain and their neurotransmitters are going to wire to that their neural network will know healthy as opposed to unhealthy.
Deanna, you work with a lot of people who have been in situations like the woman we shared in Margaret's report. What have you seen about the impact of that trauma and then trying to push forward through it too?
So unfortunately, when you have a trauma that occurs, especially in early childhood, it starts you on a path that if somebody doesn't intercede or start talking to you or try to help you go through that trauma, you carry it with you. Like we had said, like baggage. So you're going to take that. So if you are young and say you have like sexual or physical abuse because of a family member or something else that happened, then you become a teenager and then you have that with you. And if you haven't been taught the healthy relationships, if you haven't built a good foundation, the first time you meet your significant other, the boyfriend, the girlfriend, whoever, they start putting that implements on you, the violence, the physical and mental abuse, they start internalizing that it's okay.
And Catherine, you even see that in the legal system, that trauma trickles down into courtrooms often.
Very often. We deal with protective orders where men and women are seeking protection from someone who has hurt them. We also deal with parents who are trying to protect their children who have been through a traumatic situation like this. And I would echo that removing stigma and shame early on is really important. I would even go to as early as when you're having conversations about a child's body from the beginning. Every parent plays games where you talk about your eyes and you talk about your ears. Go ahead and talk about other body parts so we know what the names of all of these things are. Because if we're going to talk about naming all of our body parts and knowing what those are, if we talk about all of them, but these 2 or 3, what are we signaling about the shame that might be approaching associated with those body parts, and then making it more difficult for a child to come to us if something has happened to them that has something to do with one of those body parts.
And Kelly, I want to end with you talking about good touch, bad touch. How early do we have those conversations, and what does that conversation look like?
As soon as they can start to talk, as soon as somebody touches themselves, they find pleasure, and it's a very normal thing. So normalizing that, and then understanding that, again, there's no secrets, that it is important that they have autonomy over their body. If a parent says, go hug grandma, and a child says no, it's very important to listen to that no and respect that, because right there you're teaching them that they have autonomy over their body. So it starts as simple as somebody saying, go give somebody a hug. So many times adults get upset if their child doesn't give somebody a hug, but really it starts there.
And that can help them have healthy relationships
because it
into
builds.
Teenage and adulthood.
Yeah,
wow.
It builds.
Kelly, Catherine, Deanna, thank you so much for joining us.
Continuing coverage on the state of bullying. Abuse can happen in the home and at school. Data I've reviewed from the Virginia Department of Education shows bullying in our grade schools is rising. But what would cause a child to bully their peers, inflicting emotional or physical pain? Psychologists tell me getting to the root of it could save lives.
He was just always very outgoing. He just enjoyed life to the fullest.
I just miss my son so much.
Yeah, we do.
Ashley and Wendy Watson's 12-year-old son Brody died by suicide in 2022. The Northern Virginia family later learned their son was bullied at school. According to the Centers for Disease Control, children who are bullied are at an increased risk for anxiety, depression, and suicide-related behavior.
Because the pain that we're going through is unimaginable.
Brody's life and death inspired a new law in Virginia. It requires principals to inform parents if their child has been bullied or if their child is bullying others.
That information is critical for intervention.
Psychologist Dr. Sarah Williams says when a child bullies their peers, there's often an underlying problem.
Bullies, as we call them, already have a poor sense of self. They are usually already very insecure. There is an existence of trauma or abuse occurring.
According to the CDC, youth who bully others are at an increased risk for substance misuse, academic problems, and experiencing violence later in adolescence and adulthood.
Domestic violence, prison, or criminal history because they have not learned how to appropriately manage their emotions and their behaviors.
Why is it important to address this early?
You can provide the intervention now in the form of therapy, or you could potentially be visiting your child in juvenile or prison. Those are your choices. They didn't just wake up at 13 and become a bully. Usually you saw this type of behavior, maybe even in preschool, and it went unchecked.
The No Bully Zone movement in Hampton Roads, sparked by Shantae Miller-White, came after her daughter survived a bully's brutal attack in 2012. That experience inspired White to create Parents Against Bullying. The nonprofit focuses on providing resources to the victim and the bully.
So that's that piece that's missing, is the help, getting them the help from that trauma that they has happened to them. You hurting and hurting other people is a domino effect. But if you stop it, you can stop a whole lot of different things.
What steps should be taken for the child who is inflicting that emotional or sometimes physical harm on the other child?
Listen to why they may feel the need to inflict pain or harm to a classmate. Even if they're the bully, they still need to have the opportunity for nurturing and support.
It's an approach Dr. Williams believes could decrease bullying behavior and outcomes for victims like Brody.
But just be kind. Be kind.
Be kind for Brody.
According to the National Center for Education Statistics, 20% of children say they've been bullied. The Be Kind for Brody law, as his parents call it, could leave school leaders open to lawsuits if they do not report those cases of bullying. Of course, if you know someone who is experiencing a mental health crisis, please call or text 988. That is the 24/7 line for the National Suicide and Crisis Lifeline. Coming up, a News 3 investigation into domestic violence inside the home.
Him smashing her head into a glass table, him kicking her down.
The lasting effects one woman says she has after witnessing abuse as a child. Then, how sharing a nude photo online can lead to blackmail. A warning from federal officials about adults sextorting children online and what you need to know to help keep your children safe. Plus, we sit down with local professionals to talk about why it's important to report abuse.
A protective order didn't stop my boyfriend from shooting me. I lived, and thanks to Samaritan House, I did more than just survive. My case manager once asked me what I wanted most. I said, sit outside with a cup of coffee and just be. So I'm going to sit outside and do just that. Then I'm going to walk down the street just because I can. Only this time, instead of needing to be invisible, I will hold my head up high knowing I am a survivor. Scan the QR code or text SAM to 26989 to help others like me break free from their abuser.
As a banker at Town Bank, we believe that people bank with people, not with banks. You're looking for an actual personal relationship, and that's what you get at our bank. You get that person that gets to know you, gets to know your business, is there for you. I think that is what motivates us, what drives us, and the idea that we are trying to serve others and enrich lives, I think is very true.
As Virginia's largest industrial employer with 25,000 shipbuilders, Newport News Shipbuilding is proud to be the birthplace of freedom as we bring nuclear-powered aircraft carriers and submarines to life for the U.S. Navy. And our impact also is felt outside our gates, as we're also proud to be a part of the Hampton Roads community and support Samaritan House. Newport News Shipbuilding, a division of HII.
One was founded on 3 pillars: community, vision, leadership.
Values of your family, values of the community, values of giving back. And that's important to us. That's our whole one.
What's your one?
I'm a survivor of domestic violence, and I support Samaritan House through the group Women Against Violence, or WAVE.
Together, our voices are stronger. And together we work to end domestic violence and human trafficking in our community. Let's bring this problem out from behind the shadows.
To learn more about Women Against Violence and how you can help, visit SamaritanHouseVA.org/WAV.
I'm Margaret Kavanaugh for News 3. Brutal beatings, intense rage, and screaming. Witnessing domestic violence in your home when you're growing up can have long-lasting effects. The News 3 investigative team continues to look into this issue, and we share one local woman's story.
Sometimes he was nice, sometimes he was not nice. It was definitely love-hate.
A love-hate relationship with her mom's boyfriend, the man she called Dad, until her mom passed away when Santina Proctor was 7. She says she witnessed his explosive temper towards her mom.
Him smashing her head into a glass table, him kicking her down steps, him kicking her, stomping on her.
And while she wasn't on the receiving end of the abuse, watching it left her with emotional scars long into adulthood.
For so long, I had the mentality that I'm not going to let anybody hurt me.
The group Domestic Violence Services Incorporated reports that 5 million children witness domestic violence each year in the U.S. and say these kids suffer from PTSD and are much more likely to experience significant short and long-term psychological problems.
Witnessing domestic violence can have a lot of psychological trauma on a child and really, make a difference in their future.
And experts say they have a greater chance of repeating the pattern of abuse in adulthood.
50% of the time, children that have witnessed domestic violence could either become a perpetrator or become a victim.
A lot of times when children witness domestic violence, they fall into the same pattern. They end up being abused or become an abuser. And I'm not an abuser and I have not been abused, but I would self-sabotage.
She says she was a people pleaser and overachiever, didn't realize that she was self-sabotaging.
It was getting dangerous for me because I just didn't care. Like, I'm just here. I'm just present, but not really mentally present for anybody. And I went to a healing retreat and it changed my life.
She since wrote a book and used her faith in God to overcome challenges. Today, she has a warning for other parents.
To the people that are being abused now, that have children, your children know what's happening. You're not doing them any favors by staying in an abusive relationship.
But admits leaving is very hard.
You will be very, very uncomfortable, but you will be alive. And you probably will save a lot of money on therapy for you and your children.
If you or someone you know is in an abusive relationship and looking for resources, we have them posted on our website at WTKR.com. Margaret Kavanaugh, News 3.
I'm Brendan Ponton in Norfolk, where we're taking a look at the impact sextortion is having on kids here in Hampton Roads. Jessica B. told Scripps News she thought she was talking to a 14-year-old boy from New York. But it was really this man, Filippo Parlagreco, an adult from Warrenton, Virginia. Jessica says she was threatened into sending a picture of her, which he then used to blackmail her for 4 years. She kept that from her mom.
I didn't ever want to do anything that disappointed my mom or my family, so it was the shame and the embarrassment and the guilt.
Parlagreco was later caught and sentenced to 31 years in prison. But sextortion is an issue impacting local kids.
Kids on dating apps and kids playing video games, and typically they're talking to somebody that they think is their age, and that person is not who they say they are.
Kristen Pine is Chief Operating Officer of the YWCA of Hampton Roads, an organization helping kids or anyone dealing with sextortion.
Sextortion is a kind of sexual assault, right? So what we say to any sexual assault victim across the range of sexual violence is, you're not alone.
In recent years, this crime has taken on a financial motive, although pedophilia is still a problem as well. Federal investigators say people in other countries are posing as teenagers, getting teenagers to send them intimate photos, and then threatening to post the images unless they receive some sort of payment, gift cards, wire transfers, or cryptocurrency.
They're exploiting the children in saying, if you don't send me money, we're going to tell your parents, we're going to tell your school what you've done and posted what you shared with us, but we need money in return.
Dee Dee Wallace is a victim assistance specialist for Homeland Security Investigations, a federal agency. She says it's happening across social media platforms.
It's not so much what platform should I be afraid of, it should be aware of all platforms that will have your child engage with anybody around the world.
Federal investigators say between October 2021 and March 2023, they received more than 13,000 reports of online financial sextortion involving children. And sadly, it's led to at least 20 suicides.
The thing is, you have to remember what you were like as a kid. And that moment, you know you did something bad. And all you keep thinking of is how much trouble you're going into.
Because the crimes can involve people and servers in other countries, they can be a challenge to prosecute. But investigators say victims still need to come forward to make it stop.
Don't destroy any evidence. Don't be worried or concerned that we're going to blame the child, we're going to blame somebody else. We're going to be looking after the perpetrator and making sure that person's in trouble.
And advocates and Attorney General Jason Miyares say parents need to have conversations with their kids about smartphones and put some sort of limits on them.
So what we tell parents is if you give your child a smartphone with no parental controls on it, that is the day your child's innocence dies.
while Jessica talks about her story to help others come forward.
Just tell somebody and let somebody know what's going on, because you don't have to go through it alone.
In Norfolk, Brendan Ponton, News 3.
Incredibly important insight from my colleagues Margaret Kavanaugh and Brendan Ponton talking about the cycle of abuse and sextortion. We know those can be incredibly daunting and challenging things for our young people to endure. And reporting it is important, but it can be scary to do that. So we have brought in our friends to talk about that. So we'd like to welcome Robin Gauthier, the executive director of our partners at Samaritan House. It is a local nonprofit dedicated to helping people free themselves from violence. And we also want to welcome Deanna Wallace, a victim assistance specialist with Homeland Security. Thank you again for joining us to talk about this. We know reporting it is important. But it's also scary. Robin, tell us about why it's still important to try to move forward, whether you're going through something yourself or you are a friend or a family member that's witnessing something.
Yeah, it's really important to go forward and speak to someone in the authority realm, whether it's police, calling a local hotline or a tip line, or even a trusted friend or family member, because we don't want the perpetrator to also find another victim again and again and again. So if we can stop that early on and someone can report that and we can stop that from happening again and it's not reoccurring, that's really great.
And Samaritan House is a resource. If people call and they're in distress, you all can help them navigate that path.
Absolutely. Victims of domestic violence, sexual assault, human trafficking, if they're in the midst of being abused and they want help, they can contact our hotline. If they contact the police, they'll refer them to us as well. And we really want to be there as a resource for those victims.
Dee Dee, you talk to people all the time who have gone through these really difficult, life-changing moments, but reporting it is the first step so they can get the help that they need.
It's also really hard because a lot of victims don't see themselves as victims. So the reporting shouldn't just be coming from them, as you've heard from the report that you guys showed. Sometimes the victims themselves can't make that report. They don't see themselves as a victim. They can't even articulate that they're victimized. So when other people are looking out for them, and they're especially like teenagers, and they're paying attention to all the signs that are going on, and they're making the report for them. The word victim itself means that you're vulnerable. Right? So if you're talking about somebody who can't see themselves in a vulnerable position, or maybe because they've seen something or read something and they attribute that's what a victim is. I can't be that because that's not what I'm going through. They don't even see themselves as a victim. So you can't expect them to be able to make the report because they don't even see that they're in that type of situation. So that's why it's important that we educate not only our victims themselves, but other people around them, that they have to trust that there's going to be somebody who wants to hear that wants to help them, so that we can get them out of the situation. Because if we don't, not only could that situation occur, but it could keep getting worse. The offender could keep escalating, or they can meet somebody who's even worse than who they knew before.
You have both seen certain tragic outcomes.
Yes.
When things are not reported. Robin, tell me about that. When you learn that the worst that could happen to a person has happened because of abuse that went unchecked or unreported.
Yeah, so there's an escalation of violence that usually starts with emotional abuse all the way up to physical abuse and often death. And so we are not immune from that here in Hampton Roads. And every year we look at what the statistics are and how many people have died from being a victim of violence. And in the state of Virginia, 30% of homicides are due to domestic violence. And so that's a very high number. And we have to do everything we can to intervene and try to stop that from happening.
Thank you so much for joining us. A really important conversation, but the message here is to report it.
Yes, very much so.
Reach out.
Reach out. Next, News 3 investigates how much screen time is too much for kids.
What we do know clinically, it's taking our development down a different path.
The discussion experts say you should have with your children about the dangers of the digital age. Then, protecting your kids from online predators.
Online enticement is, in fact, a phenomenon that we have seen and grapple with in our missing child cases.
What you can do to protect your family from villains in the virtual world. Plus, what local experts say you should know about online grooming and what professionals say parents can do to prevent it.
Hey there, I'm Chandler Nunnally, co-host of Coast Live here on WTKR. The correlation between technology, self-esteem, vulnerability, and child trafficking and abuse is staggering. In a recent survey of trafficked youth, almost 71% reported the use of technology playing a role in their being recruited. Samaritan House strives to stop this threat before it even begins. Over the last 3 years, their education team has worked with over 700 youth on topics like healthy relationships, self-esteem, and staying safe on the internet. To support Samaritan House and programs like these, scan the QR code on your screen. With your help, Samaritan House can provide a brighter future for children who have been victims of violence. Support these children and their local families.
At Evertree, we never stop growing. As a company, as providers, and most importantly, as humans. With every new relationship comes a unique opportunity to positively impact the world around us. Like fingerprints, our rings represent the unique human touch we put on each and every policy. We make it personal because it is. We're here to help you feel good about your insurance. That's the Evertree difference.
I'm Troy Clifton, Executive Director of Priority Automotive Charities. And on behalf of Dennis Elmer and our Priority Automotive Charities Board of Directors, we are beyond thrilled to present a check to the Samaritan House for $10,000 for the amazing work they do in our community.
And on behalf of the Samaritan House Board of Directors, staff, and most importantly, the people we serve, thank you. Samaritan House recognized the urgent need for an extended stay, licensed, and secure residential facility in Hampton Roads for our youngest victims of human trafficking. With the generous support of the community, this shelter, called The Hallow, is about to become a reality. The Hallow is a unique place where hope and healing come together. Young girls will find safety, support, compassionate care, educational opportunities, and the chance to rebuild their lives.
I'm Erin Miller, and when you look around, everyone is staring at screens, cell phones, iPads, tablets, computers. I know it's difficult as an adult to step away, so you can imagine how tough it is for kids. In fact, I've learned that there's a correlation between screen time and brain development. I'm investigating how much screen time is too much and how to talk to your kids about online safety. Catherine Curran likes to keep the lines of communication open, both in her law practice and in her role as a mom to a 7- and 9-year-old.
We are probably on the more strict side of the spectrum in terms of not allowing screen time.
She tells me her girls have access to devices, but only in shared spaces at home and not without supervision.
One of the rules that we have is if you want to play on a device, then you have to read for the number of minutes that you want to use on the device. For me, it is a brain development and emotional development issue.
A common concern for parents. I talked to child and adolescent psychiatrist Dr. Elise Faluco about this.
Is there any correlation that you see with what screen time does and maybe what is helpful and hurtful for kids?
What we do know clinically and somewhat anecdotally is that it's taking our development down a different path.
Dr. Faluco says the first 3 to 5 years is when major brain development happens, and it continues until the early 20s. Through her work at CHKD, she says,
I've talked with a bunch of preschool teachers who say they've noticed since the advent of screens and social media that kids no longer have fine motor skills. Like they're just used to holding in a screen.
For adolescents and teens, Dr. Faluco says using social media,
it essentially lights up our own reward centers in our brain and releases this chemical or neurotransmitter dopamine, which makes us feel really good.
A form of addiction, which is why it's so hard to get kids off. In fact, a 2023 study from the Pew Research Center found between 80 and 90% of teens are on social media, and 1 in 5 report that they are using it constantly. The overuse, coupled with a developing brain, is how some kids can find themselves in trouble.
My youngest victim of online exploitation was 9 years old.
Christina Karabov works with the Zero Abuse Project, a nonprofit to protect kids from abuse and sexual assault, especially online. She tells me parents need to be willing to look through a child's phone, read messages, and look at search history.
There is a lot of abuse that occurs by adults, and it can be someone pretending to be a child. It can be someone who is in the child's life in a position of trust capacity.
Like in this federal case where investigators say a former Virginia Beach baseball coach is facing prosecution for possessing, reproducing, distributing, or soliciting child pornography. According to these documents, Shannon Robbins regularly created numerous accounts on Instagram, Snapchat, and TikTok as part of his attempts both to evade detection and to deceive his child victims.
Most offenders who have designs on children will redirect the conversation to another application, including those with encryption, so that the parent can't detect it.
She says apps with encryption like Signal, WhatsApp, and Mega should not be on a kid's phone. If they are hiding apps, turning off photo sharing, and their location, parents need to start asking questions.
The more parents educate themselves about this, they know what to look for then.
A few other pieces of advice from all of the women that I spoke with: keep phones out of your kids' bedrooms and have open conversations with them about what apps they're using. The American Academy of Pediatrics has a lot of really helpful information about how to have these conversations. I have that linked for you on WTKR.com. I'm Erin Miller, News 3.
For many kids, online gaming is a source of fun. And on many of those games, they're connecting with countless strangers. Wait, who's this?
It's Billy.
But there's no way to know if Billy is another kid or an adult predator, taking aim at manipulating, abusing, or luring your child away.
Never in a million years thought that she would have been somebody that would happen to.
We're concealing this Virginia dad's identity to protect his daughters. He told us his teenage child was an avid gamer who went missing for weeks. She was lured several states away by a grown man she met over an online game.
We couldn't believe it, that she was able to be basically groomed the way she was.
The man who groomed and abused the child is now serving 30 years in prison for production of child sexual abuse material.
We'll stop at nothing to find a missing child and bring justice to those who are involved.
The FBI helped bring that Virginia girl home safely, but the Norfolk Assistant Special Agent in charge says she is far from the last child a predator will target through an online game.
We know what's going on, and unfortunately, it's happening more and more.
Online enticement is, in fact, a phenomenon that we have seen and grapple with in our missing child cases.
Limi Kong Sofer is with the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. She points to their research that indicates gaming sites are the third most used by adults to speak with children online, behind social media sites and messenger apps.
There are adults on these platforms who are there specifically to meet children.
Why do predators use that to target children?
Why do robbers rob the bank? Because that's where the money is. That's where the children are.
That's Lisa Plagmeyer with the National Cybersecurity Alliance.
Military people would call it PSYOPs, psychological operations. They're looking for victims that are emotionally vulnerable. Show me a middle schooler that isn't emotionally vulnerable.
They're figuring out, am I valuable to other people? Am I handsome? Am I beautiful?
LaShonda Carson is a social worker and program director at Samaritan House. It's a nonprofit that helps people free themselves from domestic and sexual violence, human trafficking, and homelessness. She says unchecked and unlimited time gaming can put your child in a predator's crosshairs.
There's potential for someone else having access to your child all night.
Wow.
Folks that are exploiting children on gaming systems or online, they use the same exploitive measures of any other predator.
Carson says predators will try to gain the child's trust through conversations on the game and eventually move the communication to phones or messaging apps.
When there's changes in their demeanor, when they're more withdrawn, they're staying on their gaming system all morning, all night, sometimes overnight, not sleeping, increased anxiety, increased depression, something's happening with that child.
Carson encourages parents to engage in the games with their child, to bond, and to be on the lookout for any odd communication.
Should parents ask, like, hey, can you show me how the game works?
Absolutely. While they're gaming, you're doing your work in the background or listening in on some of the conversations.
Plagmeyer agrees.
Maybe not with headphones. Maybe you want to be able to hear some of those conversations that are going on.
Plagmeyer says parents should make sure the game's parental controls are turned on.
I think their safety is far more important than that privacy.
A lesson one Virginia dad, grateful to have his daughter back, learned.
Check every device. Kids are going to hate you, but you got to do it for their safety.
It is clear we need to have a conversation about the dangers our children are facing in these online interactions. So I have a group of people who are here to help navigate us through that.
Joining us again is Kelly Andrews, a play therapist with Military Integrated Therapies. Catherine Curran, a parent and managing partner with Morris, Curran, and O'Keefe. And we also have Dr. Larry Daniels, a pediatric nurse practitioner with the Barry Robinson Center.
We were listening to the reports from our team, and I saw a lot of head shaking and nodding when we talked about keeping phones away at night, maybe not sleeping with the phones in the bedroom, giving that access. Dr. Daniels, tell me about why you were shaking your head when you heard that advice in Aaron's report.
Because you want to help children learn appropriate sleep habits, and that means making sure that the bed is only used for sleep, but making sure that anytime a child is using a media device of any type, it is in a public place where everybody can see what they're doing.
Because that abuse can thrive in secrecy. We're seeing when the headphones are on the games, you don't know what conversations they're having, you don't know what people are telling them. When we were talking about the online gaming, I saw you shake your head when it said maybe if you're allowing the kids to play the games, maybe they don't do it without the headset. Why is that so important?
I liken the internet when I'm talking to my children or to other parents that I'm dealing with in my law practice as walking down a public street. Anything that you would not let your child do on a public street, you should not let them do on the internet. Wow. So I wouldn't let my 7-year-old walk down a public street downtown by themselves. So I don't let them go on the internet by themselves.
That is an incredible perspective. What are some of the signs, Kelly, that we should be looking for in children that something isn't right there?
Withdrawal from normal activities, not wanting to play with friends in person. That's taken away because everything is now asynchronous and people are playing online instead of in person. Depression, sadness, not wanting to share what they're doing online, that's a big one. Being able to get around parental controls too. Not using parental controls as a parent because kids are smarter than us and they learn way faster than we do when it comes to technology.
How important is it, and this is for anyone, of making sure as a parent or as a caregiver, you are providing an open space to say, hey, you can tell me if something's wrong. Because a lot of times the kids are afraid to say, someone has a nude photo of me. I'm interacting with someone and I think they're an adult. They're not a kid like I thought they were, but they're afraid to tell their parents because they think they might get punished. What should we model for kids to talk to us?
A lot of people have a phrase that they will give their children to text them if they have gotten themselves into a situation where they feel unsafe and they think that they need to get out of it. Generally, it's a phrase that they would use where they're away from their parent and they need their parent to come get them. It could be any phrase that you and your child decide upon that you both know means, I want you to come and get me, and helps them save face.
Thank you all so much for joining us to talk about our children and being safe online. We appreciate it. Thank you. Coming up next, we speak with experts on why it's so important for communities to have a safe space for victims of abuse. More on the resources that could save you or a loved one right here in Hampton Roads.
Hi, I'm April Woodard from Coast Live here on WTKR. I am so grateful for the partnership between WTKR and Samaritan House over the past 5 years. As a mother of two, this discussion really resonates with me. The education and outreach Samaritan House provides to local schools and after-school programs has helped thousands of children navigate through these tough topics. It has given them tools to make informed decisions as they navigate the online world, from playing games to starting to date. Join us by becoming part of their vision. Scan the QR code on your screen to show your support. With your help, Samaritan House can provide a brighter future for children who have been victims of violence.
Most of the time, banking hasn't been for people like us. We work regular jobs, make regular wages, and have regular credit scores. We're not financial experts. We make mistakes every now and then. And when we do, banks make us pay the price. At Langley, everyone gets a fair shake. Financial products designed for regular people. That's only fair. That's Langley. That's banking for the rest of us.
One was founded on 3 pillars: community, vision, leadership.
Values of your family, values of the community, values of giving back. And that's important to us. That's our whole one.
What's your one?
You taught him how to hit a baseball, how to hit a receiver, a strike zone, a 9-iron, the net. But how much time have you spent teaching him what not to hit? Hi, I'm Jonathan Orr, Community Prevention Specialist at Samaritan House and coordinator of Coaching Boys into Men, the violence prevention program that leverages the power of sports and coaches to teach healthy relationship skills. For more information about this program, visit SamaritanHouseVA.org.
Feel like it's getting harder to keep your head above water? These days, it costs more to get by than ever. At AB&B, we offer real-life financial solutions designed to make the money you do have do more. Like Malik in Elizabeth City, earning more on his money with higher rates on certificates and money markets. And Ria in Norfolk, who refinanced her mortgage at AB&B and saved $350 a month. Can your bank do that? Save money with financial solutions for you at AB&B.
There are resources that are available to help children and teenagers experiencing abuse in our community. So let's talk about it. Joining us once more is Robin Gauthier, the executive director of the local nonprofit Samaritan House. And we also have victim assistance specialist with Homeland Security, Deanna Wallace, once again. We've got to talk about a huge initiative that is starting, that Samaritan House is doing to help young women who've been trafficked in our communities. Tell us about that.
Yes, the Hollow is a new facility that Samaritan House has built for sex trafficked girls. It's the first in its region, in our region, and it will assist up to 8 girls ages 11 to 17, and it's a residential group home, therapeutic group home for girls that have suffered trafficking and exploitation. And so we're really thrilled to be able to offer that to the community. There was such a gap in housing for young girls that have been trafficked. There was absolutely no place to bring them. Very often they would end up in juvenile detention just to have them in a facility where they would be safe and not be able to leave. However, we knew that wasn't the best place for them.
To hear you talk about the ages, 11 to 17, because there are people that young in our community who have been trafficked. We have to wrap our minds around the fact that that is happening to people in our community.
Absolutely, and probably younger.
Wow, wow. Dee Dee, let's talk about some of the resources that you've experienced. We talked a lot about children being targeted online by these adults who are preying on children.
Mm-hmm.
The kids get nervous if they send a nude photo of themselves, if they get wrapped up in this sextortion, that there's no way out. Many of them have resulted to dying by suicide because of that fear. but there is a new project from some partners that you can tell us about.
Yes, absolutely. We're so excited that the National Missing and Exploited and Children have started the Takedown program, which means that if a child has self-produced, which sadly a lot of our sextortion cases, that's where it's coming from, is that they initiate the photo and then they're being basically blackmailed with their own photo. So if they have the photo on their own phone or however they took it, they can go to the National Missing and Exploited, go look for the Takedown program. They can submit their photo because it's coming from their device, right? Like they started it, so they can send it in. Then what the National Missing and Exploited, NCMEC, can do is they have, like, we'll just say like little robots, right? And these little bots will go out throughout the internet and locate those photos. And then they're going to send information to whatever website or whatever, whoever owns those images. And then they're going to receive a letter asking for that to be taken down because it was a minor. So for the first time since, like, I started in 2013, we've been able to start saying to young victims, it's not forever. We're going to see what we can do to help it down, because we used to say the internet's forever and we can't help you.
And Robin, Samaritan House is a beacon of hope and resources here in Hampton Roads. How can people get connected to that?
They can call our 24-hour hotline. We're always available, 757-430-2120. They can contact us day or night. We will assess their situation, whatever services they are requesting, whatever they need or want. We will make that available to them. We can assist them going to court if they're looking for protective orders or help with getting custody of their children, or whatever it is that they need. We can keep them safe.
Well, bless the work that you all are doing. Thank you so much for joining us to talk about these resources.
Thank you.
Up next, what our local partner Samaritan House is doing to educate students here in Hampton Roads.
In talking to people from the youngest ages, we're hoping that they'll be able to scaffold those skills and qualities as they grow older, so that it will just become natural to avoid violence.
Thank you for joining Samaritan House and WTKR News 3 and exploring the dangers of being a child in the digital age and how violence tragically plays a part in it. I hope the topics discussed tonight were enlightening, and as parents, you're able to put some of the ideas into practice.
I've certainly learned a lot this evening. You know, it's encouraging to see the wide range of programs that Samaritan House provides to educate our future leaders and their families.
It's not too late to make a difference. Please join us in Samaritan House's ongoing efforts by scanning the QR code on your screen right now.
That's right. With your help, Samaritan House can provide a brighter future for children who have unfortunately been victims of violence. Support these children and their families in our community.
Birthplace of freedom. I mean, there's, nobody else can do what we do.
From the time you walk in the gate to the time you leave, you feel the history and you feel the camaraderie and you just feel that entire shipbuilding legacy and tradition. It's just the greatest feeling.
Newport News Shipping, a division of HII.
As a banker at Town Bank, we believe that people bank with people, not with banks. You're looking for an actual personal relationship, and that's what you get at our bank. You get that person that gets to know you, gets to know your business, is there for you. I think that is what motivates us, what drives us, and the idea that we are trying to serve others and enrich lives, I think is very true.
I'm Brendan Ponton. Right now, we're taking a look at how Samaritan House in Virginia Beach is educating local students.
Samaritan House says it's very important to bring their message into schools because they say teenagers need to know about these topics and because they tragically can become victims themselves.
Thank you so much for inviting me to speak with you today. I'm really excited.
At Princess Anne High School in Virginia Beach,
I'm going to sneak in some anti-violence education.
So what is domestic violence?
Haley Wagoner, a primary prevention specialist from Samaritan House, is here with an important message.
My job as primary prevention specialist is to talk with youth and make sure that they have the education they need to stay safe, whether from domestic violence, sexual abuse, or human trafficking.
And in front of the Psych Club, today's talk is all about domestic violence.
The important words to remember are a pattern for power and control.
According to the American Psychological Association, up to 19% of teenagers experience sexual or physical dating violence.
In talking to people from the youngest ages, we're hoping that they'll be able to scaffold those skills and qualities as they grow older so that it will just become natural to avoid violence.
And in a second presentation a few weeks later at Denby High School in Newport News,
All right, how many of you think that human trafficking is like the movie Taken?
an overview of human trafficking in front of the Flourish Club.
What is human trafficking? Does anybody know?
The talk features some at times potentially upsetting topics and examples.
Well, human trafficking, unfortunately, is pretty widespread in Hampton Roads, and the only way to really prevent it is to educate people about what it is and how it happens.
But it's topics these students can benefit from learning about.
I hope they took away to be safe, especially on the internet. This is something to be a little bit scared of, but that there's a lot of opportunities to get help and to stay safe.
As these talks serve as an educational deterrent.
Inviting us to things like your club today is a really important way to combat violence in our community.
I'm Brendan Ponton, News 3.
Thank you all so much for sharing all of your guidance and wisdom with us for this very special report, Loss of Innocence. News 3 is committed to following through on ways to help child and teenage victims of abuse in our community. So thank you again for sharing all of that knowledge and wisdom. I'm Jessica Larche, and hopefully the information you've heard will give you the courage and the knowledge you or someone you know might need to take the steps toward healing and safety. Remember, you are not alone.